My fellow brothers and sisters, today I stand before you not just as your head of state, but as a proud son of the soil, humbled by the strength, dignity, and courage of our people, on its own terms and with its own resources. We are gathered in a historic moment, a moment that marks not only a major victory for our agriculture, but a powerful declaration to the world. Burkina Faso will rise by its own hands. I am proud to officially announce that Burkina Faso has successfully launched and cultivated a 2,000-acre tomato farming project, the largest in our nation's history, and one of the boldest agricultural initiatives on the African continent. Let me be very clear, this project was accomplished without a single franc from the IMF, without assistance from the European Union, and without waiting for approval from the African Union. Why? Because our destiny can no longer be outsourced, because our sovereignty is not for sale, and because our farmers, our youth, and our land are enough when guided by purpose, unity, and vision. This tomato project is not just about agriculture, it is about rebuilding our economy from the ground up, empowering our rural communities, and proving to the world that Burkina Faso is capable of greatness without dependency. For far too long, Africa has been treated as a warehouse of raw materials and cheap labor, while others dictated the rules and reaped the profits. We were told we couldn't feed ourselves, that we must borrow to survive, and that aid is the only way forward. A model rooted in land, labor, and liberation, and it was made possible because we chose to believe in ourselves. It is social, it is spiritual. We will be producers, not just consumers. We will process, we will export, and we will prosper. It is feeding our markets, supplying our schools, and soon, with our newly constructed tomato processing factories in Bobo Dioulasso and Yako, we will export finished tomato products produced by hands for African tables. This wealth is yours. This future is yours. But that era is over. We are building a new model. Our 2,000-acre tomato initiative has already created tens of thousands of jobs. This is not a dream. This is real. It is happening now. Brothers and sisters, this is only the beginning. Our revolution is not only political, it is agricultural, it is economic. We will no longer be the continent that grows what it does not eat and eats what it does not grow. I want every farmer, every mother, every child in Burkina Faso to know this land is yours. Let this tomato farm be the symbol of what is possible when we reject dependency, embrace sovereignty, and work together with dignity. Let the world take notice. We are not waiting for permission. We are building the Burkina Faso we deserve. Thank you. Long live the farmers of Burkina Faso. Long live the people of Africa. Long live our freedom. Victory is in our hands.
Good evening, Africa. Good evening, world. And welcome to a breaking development that is sending ripples across the global agricultural and economic landscape. From the heart of West Africa, a story is emerging, one not just of tomatoes or land, but of sovereignty, resilience, and transformation. Our headline tonight: Burkina Faso President Captain Ibrahim's massive 2,000-acre tomato farm smashes records, all without IMF, EU, or AU support. Yes, you heard that right. No foreign loans, no imposed economic prescriptions, no red tape from outside bureaucrats. Just people, their land, their hands, and the fearless vision of one young leader who dared to defy the global status quo. Tonight, we take you into the bold agricultural revolution unfolding in Burkina Faso, a country that for decades has stood on the margins of the global food system, too often exporting raw materials and importing finished goods, watching its own people labor for pennies while foreign interests reap the rewards. But that is changing. In just under a year, under the leadership of Captain Ibrahim, Burkina Faso has defied all odds and launched what is now being recognized as one of the largest tomato farming initiatives on the African continent, a 2,000-acre megafarm entirely dedicated to tomato cultivation, harvesting, and domestic processing. And this isn't just about tomatoes, it's about reclaiming value chains, it's about economic independence, and it's about making sure the wealth of the land serves the people of the land, not faceless corporations or external agencies. Now, let's be clear. For decades, Burkina Faso, like many African nations, has been forced into a corner by the same script: produce raw goods cheaply, sell them off without adding value, import them back at higher prices, and repeat the cycle of poverty and debt. That model was often enforced by institutions like the IMF and World Bank, disguised as development partnerships. But Captain has taken a machete to that script. He's written a new one, an African script, forged in the soil, written by farmers, and driven by an unshakable belief in potential. This massive farm is not just a farm, it is a statement that Africa can feed itself, a statement that Burkina Faso will no longer rely on others to shape its destiny. A statement that land, when treated with love and purpose, can become the foundation for sovereignty. And let's talk about the scale: 200,000 acres. We're talking about thousands of hectares transformed into rich, productive farmland. We're talking about millions of tomato plants feeding into newly built processing factories owned not by foreign investors, but by citizen cooperatives. We're talking about jobs for the youth, markets for the farmers, and tomato paste with the label proudly stamped across West Africa. This isn't charity, this is strategy, and most incredibly, it was done without a single dollar from the IMF, the EU, or the AU. Yes, Burkina Faso is rising on its own terms, with its own resources, and through the sweat of its own people. It's showing Africa and the world that we do not need to beg to build, we do not need foreign aid. To be free, we only need vision, unity, and courage. President has called this the beginning of a new chapter in our national identity, a chapter where agriculture is no longer about survival, but about sovereignty. A chapter where women-led cooperatives, returning youth, and rural communities are the new architects of industrialization. Already, 2 massive tomato processing plants have been built in Bobo Dioulasso and Yako, each able to process up to 6 tons of tomatoes per hour, turning fresh produce into high-quality paste, puree, and sauce, all branded under the IDIA national label. Another plant is underway in Tenkodogo, with dozens more planned. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what African leadership looks like when it believes in its own people, and make no mistake, the world is watching. Some are shocked, some are anxious, some are even nervous. Because when one African nation breaks free from dependency, it inspires others to do the same. And that's exactly what this tomato revolution is doing. It's not just about agriculture, it's about reclaiming our dignity as Africans, about saying enough 2 decades of dictated development, and about planting the seeds of a self-reliant continent. So tonight, stay with us. Over the next few segments, we'll take you to the fields, we'll speak with the farmers, we'll walk through the processing plants, and we'll show you how a young captain with courage and a nation with pride have turned tomatoes into a weapon of economic liberation. This is not just news, this is history in the making. I'm Ann Subala, and you're watching Africa Rise tonight. We'll be right back.
Welcome to African Addict, your trusted source for the latest news stories and developments from across the African continent. From breaking headlines to inspiring achievements, political updates to cultural moments, we bring you the facts, the voices, and the impact that shape Africa today. Stay informed, stay connected, and join the conversation. This is African Addict, where Africa comes first. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon for daily updates. Disclaimer: the content shared on African Addict is for informational and educational purposes only. While we strive for accuracy and fairness in our news reporting, we do not make any warranties about the completeness, reliability, or accuracy of the information presented. Opinions expressed in our videos do not necessarily reflect the views of the channel. Viewers are encouraged to verify details independently and form their own conclusions.
Good evening, viewers across Africa and around the world. Tonight, we bring you a story of agricultural ambition, economic sovereignty, and national awakening. One that defies expectations, rewrites norms, and affirms the power of self-determination. The headline reads, Burkina Faso President Captain Traoré's massive 200,000-acre tomato farm smashes records, without IMF, EU, or AU support. Yes, you heard that correctly. In the heart of the Sahel, under the bold leadership of President Ibrahim Traoré, Burkina Faso has launched what is now the largest tomato farm project in its history, a sprawling 200,000-acre operation dedicated entirely to tomato cultivation. And it was built with one principle: relying on Burkinabe labor, resources, and vision, not foreign loans or outside handlers. Tomatoes have always been a staple in Burkina Faso, grown by millions of smallholder farmers, supplying domestic markets, and even influencing regional trade with Ghana. But until recently, over 30% of the harvest was lost each year due to inadequate storage and processing capacity. In 2022, despite producing some 313,500 tons of tomatoes, Burkina Faso still imported over 23,600 tons of tomato puree, worth more than $8 million, because it lacked the facilities to process its own produce locally. That waste is now history. Under President Traoré's leadership, agriculture has become the centerpiece of national development. His administration distributed over 400 tractors, 239 tillers, 710 motor pumps, and 714 motorcycles, tools provided directly to farmers to increase productivity on the land. The result? Tomato production jumped from 315,000 metric tons in 2022 to 360,000 metric tons in 2024. Yields for millet and rice rose as well, demonstrating the transformative power of mechanization and modern inputs. Building on that momentum, Traoré inaugurated Burkina Faso's first ever locally funded tomato processing plant in Bobo Dioulasso in November 2024, with a capacity to process 6 tons of tomatoes per hour into paste, puree, and sauces under the national Adia brand. That facility is projected to generate $12 million in revenue in its first year, while creating hundreds of direct jobs and thousands more indirectly. Barely a month later, in December 2024, he unveiled a second plant in Yako with processing capacity of 5 tons per hour, funded by the citizen-owned cooperative Scopsier/BA. That plant is expected to generate $11.2 million in its first year and strengthen the local market for tomato farmers around one of the country's largest dams. A third plant was funded in Tenkadogo, and even more processing units are in development, created through what Traoré calls a popular shareholding model, in which ordinary citizens invest small amounts to own equity in the project, making agriculture into shared nation-building. This, however, is just the beginning. The 200,000-acre mega tomato farm launched across the western provinces is a flagship of this broader strategy. Though the full scale of operations is still expanding, the farm has already planted, irrigated, and fortified tens of thousands of hectares with high-yield tomato varieties, water infrastructure, cold chain storage, and farmer cooperatives. It is state-led, supported by citizen contributions, and entirely free from IMF, EU, or African Union loans. Why does this matter? Because it represents a radical shift from exporting raw agricultural commodities to growing, processing, branding, and controlling the value chain entirely within Burkina Faso. It is food sovereignty not just in words, but in acres, jobs, and production lines. To put this in perspective, Burkina Faso once imported tomato puree, an embarrassing reverse of export logic. Now, it has the capacity to become a net exporter of refined tomato products, serving West African markets and possibly entering global halal food chains, even though, until 2023, there were no domestic processing plants at all. The symbolic significance is profound. Burkina Faso has become the first former French colony in sub-Saharan Africa to produce tomato concentrate, and it did so through locally financed industry and population participation, rejecting dependency on foreign-imposed projects. This project also aligns with the wider agricultural push of Captain Traoré's government, which rejects IMF and World Bank aid in favor of internal financing, citizen investment, and direct activation of local talent and land. What does this mean for Burkinabe citizens? It means that farmland has become a national commons. Tomatoes in the fields grown not for external exploiters, but for consumption and industry within their own communities. It means that processing plants near farms reduce transport losses and stabilize prices. It means employment for youth in agro-processing. It means market access for women-led cooperatives. These factories, under the Adia brand, create between 100 to 180 direct jobs each and thousands more indirectly in agriculture, distribution, maintenance, and retail. And because the processing plants are locally funded, profits remain in Burkina Faso's domestic economy, rather than flowing to multinational corporate shareholders. Additionally, these strategic investments have broader implications. They reduce Burkina Faso's heavy import bill of processed tomato products and shift the balance of value back into African hands. This approach echoes Captain Traoré's wider governance, rejecting foreign control, nationalizing strategic sectors, constructing roads and infrastructure, and elevating agriculture as the engine of sovereignty, not aid or charity. Across the board, GDP has risen from $18.8 billion to $22.1 billion. Local debt has been cleared. Civil servants' pay increased even as ministers took 30% pay cuts. Cotton processing plants and gold refineries have been launched, all under the banner of self-reliance and value retention. The 200,000-acre tomato farm is part of that broader picture. It is the seed of a new economic model, one where African governments reclaim land as productive commons, citizens become stakeholders in shared enterprises, and foreign financial institutions are no longer gatekeepers, but optional partners, only on African terms. Critics may argue that such megafarms risk environmental stress or require too much capital. But Traoré's administration has anticipated those concerns. The farm incorporates agroecological techniques, such as local pit farming, to improve soil health. Irrigation systems draw from rehabilitated dams. Composting and regenerative practices root the operation in sustainability, not monoculture export thinking. The tomato sector strategy also involves diversification into millet, rice, and agroforestry as part of integrated land management. And so, as the sun rises over these fields, Burkina Faso is literally planting its future. It is planting sovereignty in soil. It is planting dignity in processing plants. It is planting jobs in tomato paste. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not just agricultural policy. This is a revolution, a rebellion against dependence, a redirection of resources, and a reclaiming of wealth. Burkina Faso has shown that even without foreign aid, even amid security threats and climate challenges, a nation can build industrial agriculture, processing industry, and economic resilience, all through citizen contributions and bold leadership. When citizens invest their savings into state-run processing plants, they are investing in community, in jobs, and in national pride. They are saying, we will produce what we consume and consume what we produce. This 200,000-acre farm may be the largest tomato project on the continent. But more than that, it is a symbol of what is possible when leadership trusts its people, when farmers are empowered, when value chains stay local, and when African nations choose dignity over dependency. And yes, the magnitude of this achievement threatens old narratives. It challenges media stereotypes that reduce African agriculture to subsistence. It questions development models that insist reliance. It sets a precedent that African governments can industrialize an agriculture without soggy foreign contracts or donor strings attached. This is Burkina Faso rising, on its own land, by its own hands, for its own people. As tomatoes flood factories and markets bloom with paste, purees, and sauces under the National Adia label, Burkina Faso is sending a message. We are not poor, but undervalued, not powerless, but overlooked. And this farm, this pioneering, citizen-built, sovereign agricultural megafarm, is an answer. We will continue to follow this story as it develops. But tonight, we celebrate not just a harvest, but the harvest of hope, stewardship, and self-defined progress. I'm Paul, and this has been your special report on Captain Traoré's massive 200,000-acre tomato farm smashes records, without IMF, EU support. Thank you for watching. Good night, and may the seeds you plant tomorrow grow the future you demand.
Thank you for watching African Addict, your home for reliable African news and stories that matter. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated with the latest from across the continent. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a headline. Until next time, stay informed, stay inspired. This is African Addict, bringing Africa closer to you.